Good evening, everybody. I was looking at a new conspiracy tonight, or today, rather, I should say. No, it was tonight. Actually, it was after I was. It's like 9 o'clock. I just got off work. I was at work like, it was after hours and whatever. I was doing work and listening on my headphones. And it's called the jet fuel hoax, and they talk about these Airbus A380s and how there's no jet fuel. It's all air pressure, air compressed technology, and I think I'm gonna have to say that it was very compelling, and it's very impressive how some of these people make these really nice videos. But I'm not really going for this conspiracy theory. I kind of see where they're coming from, but and there may be like 10% of there may be something there. That's the way. I mean, to me, that's the real value of what Aristotle said when he said the mark of an educated mind is the ability to entertain an idea without accepting it. The real value is that a thing doesn't have to be entirely true in order to be true, to have some value. I pretty much, not entirely, but almost entirely abandoned the whole idea of truth and lies, and I look more in terms of value. I mean, some things are just, I don't want to get off on all that. I'd be talking about that for an hour, but there might be something there. I don't know. But I was kind of, it was intriguing, but I don't think, it's interesting. If you get a chance to look at it, maybe you might find it interesting. You might find it really, really dumb, but it's just the most interesting part of it is how much skepticism people have in official narratives, establishment narratives, what they're being told. And for me, it always goes back to the fact that the establishment, the world system, the scientists, et cetera, they recently tried to, they're still trying to tell us, actually. They haven't given up. They've just been completely discredited. We just have to be very, is it wary or leery? I get those two words mixed up all the time. There's wary, there's weary, and there's leery. So, anyway, those words are easy to confuse. Wary is the word I think I'm looking for. Very wary of, of them coming back with this thing. I mean, because basically what I'm talking about is the idea that cow flatulence melts ice at the North Pole and the South Pole. And obviously that's the whole global warming debacle. But, anybody that tries to tell anybody that, honestly, you deserve to be completely discredited, and you deserve to have everything questioned that you ever say again for the entirety of your existence. If you say the sun rises in the east, you deserve to be challenged on that point, because you've basically established yourself as a person who has zero credibility. Not only do you have zero credibility, but you have less than zero credibility. That is to say, you've established yourself as somebody who actively tries to lie and defraud other people. So that's the most interesting thing about all these conspiracy theories, I think, and this one in particular. But nevertheless, in spite of the fact that you kind of have to write it off, there are some things interesting. I'm just going to file away in the back of my mind, but I'm not really going for it at this point in time. The thing I want to talk about today is this notion that's been going around in my church recently that so many people are a paycheck away from being homeless. I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking about this, and I went to an event, and they repeat this thing, and it's like, some cliches have some value to them, they really do. Some do. I'm not seeing it with this one. I went to this event, and I sort of got swayed a little bit during the event, but I think it was the ambiance, the nature of the event, being surrounded by thousands of people and having some officials up on stage with a microphone in front of all these people. I think they made some good points, and I sort of got swayed on it, but I'm kind of tired, and I'm a little bit grouchy, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I'm going back in the opposite direction tonight, and I want to talk about it because, number one, it's a cliche, and like lying scientists and lying officials who buy the scientists and pay them to say whatever they want them to say, who deserve to be challenged even if they say the sun rises in the east, or that the sky is blue or that water's wet. No matter what they say, they should be challenged, not because of the fact that what they're saying sounds bad, but because they're bad. They are established, they are confirmed, as being bad, So even if they say something that sounds very natural and very obviously true, nevertheless, because of their identity, they deserve to be challenged on it, if nothing else, as a form of punishment, make an example out of them. But also because they can't be trusted, even if they say something that's obviously true, Maybe they have some ulterior motive in saying something that's true, and the fact that they're saying something that's true, they've picked a suspicious time to say it or something. I mean, you know what I'm saying. I mean, an established bad person, you just shouldn't trust them. It doesn't matter what they say or do. You just should not trust them. But so the same thing with cliches. I think cliches out of the gate, they should always be challenged. Because and if they're challenged or they're found to be of value, they're found to be good, then okay, well then fine. Well then they've been determined to be good. So just as default, every time I hear a cliche, I'm kind of like, my little skeptical spikes come out. It's like, pting! It's like, wait a minute, cliche alert, something's probably wrong here. Something's probably wrong. It's like truth from the dollar store. It's like truth from the thrift shop. It's like worn out, used up, threadbare truth. That's kind of what a cliche is. It's like a something you get at the thrift shop. But so yeah, I'm like, the thing that I've concluded is that that's just a bunch of nonsense, because there's only one type of person that's going to lose their paycheck and become homeless, and that's a person who's living in a hotel, right? I mean, because if you go and you get a hotel room and then you don't pay your bill, they're going to kick you out, and then you're not going to have a place. You can't live in that place anymore. I mean, even for those people, it doesn't mean you're going to be homeless. It just means you can't live in the place that you just got kicked out of. But for the sake of argument, let's just say that you are homeless. Okay? And that's the only kind of person that's going to be homeless if they miss a paycheck. I mean, but that's not even guaranteeing that if you're living in a hotel and you miss a paycheck, you're going to be homeless. It just means that that's the only type of person who is exposed to the potential of being homeless. I mean, if you're living in an apartment, you have a lease. If you live in a house, you have a more. I mean, if you're living in an apartment and you miss a paycheck, and that means you can't, and as a consequence of missing that paycheck, that means you can't pay your rent. See, if you miss a paycheck, that doesn't mean you can't pay your rent, or you hope. It's just it's a subset of a subset of a subset. But I mean, the way they throw this cliche around, it makes it sound like the whole world is going to become homeless if they miss a paycheck. And it's like, now at this event they didn't make it sound that way, but that's why other people at the event they said, people that struggle financially, whatever. And that's where I started to be swayed, because they made it sound a little bit more like rational. Like if you're struggling financially, like if you make a certain amount, they said something like 47,000, family of 4, 40,000 or something like that. And yeah, that's true. If you're making a certain amount of money that's low, then you're going to be struggling financially. That doesn't mean you have to be living paycheck to paycheck, because some people are just good with their money. I mean, you could have two people make the same amount of money, live right next door to each other. This guy has $10,000 in the bank. This guy is $10,000 behind in his bills and has no money in the bank. I mean, that's the truth. I've always been the second guy. I'm ashamed of that fact. It's not a good thing, but I'm just saying. But I know people who were the other guy. So it's and by the same token, you could make $1 million and $1 million, and the same thing. One guy's broke, one guy has money in the bank. I mean, it's just these cliches. They just will drive you mad. About the 100th time you hear something, you just want to go crazy, especially if it doesn't make any sense. It's like, if you miss a paycheck, you're going to be home. What, are you living in a hotel? I mean, if you have a lease, the landlord has to follow a legal process. That process takes 60 to 90 days. Come on, people. Why do we do this? I don't understand why we engage in this baby talk. It's like baby talk. Yeah, it's like, I don't want to get too crazy with the theatrics, but I mean, it's just like baby talk. It's like, no, this makes no sense. Can we be grown-ups for a minute and actually think about what we say before we regurgitate some worn-out, used-up words that 100 million people already said 1,000 times a piece? I mean, sir, this makes no sense. If you have an apartment, your landlord has to follow a legal process. 60 to 90, you miss a paycheck, you go get another job. Look, if you're behind, if you're all chewed up financially because you're like me and you don't know how to deal with money, well, that has nothing to do with social justice. That just means you're bad with money, okay? And you need to get your act together. And you're going to go down to the city hall and ask some politician to help you because you stink at managing money like I do? I've never asked a politician. I've asked friends, and family, and nobody ever helps, and that's okay. I mean, that's their prerogative. I don't begrudge anybody for not helping me, but I mean, that's what you have to do, right? I mean, you got to go ask the politicians up there talking about, oh, we have $80 million. It's like $80 million. By the time that $80 million goes through the political process and comes, I mean, come on, what are we doing? What kind of game are we playing? This is like a baby game. I mean, how long are we going to do this before we realize it's just an exercise in insanity, right? I mean, $1 trillion. Do the math on this. $1 million. You think about 500 sheets of paper down at Office Depot. It's about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches high. That's 500 sheets of paper. That's 500 $100 bills, if you want to look at it that way, stacked on top of each other. 1.5 inches. Now, you just keep doing the math out. 500 takes 10,000 of those to make $1 million. Now, you're up to about 20 inches of paper. This is $1 million, 20 inches. That's $1 million. That's not much money. You spend that money in about 30 minutes. That's not much money. So that's $1 million. $1 billion is higher than the Empire State Building because that's 20 inches times 1,000. You do the math, okay? That's like 1,500 feet. $1 trillion is 355 miles out into space or straight up. That's $1 trillion. 355 miles or two. I've done the math a couple times. It comes out different depending on how you round it. But just to say 300 miles of $100 bill. Miles stacked flat, not end to end, not side to side, flat, like pieces of paper, right, on top of each other, like a piece of paper stacked flat. 300 miles. That's $1 trillion. And we have spent 20 million, 20 trillion, 30 trillion, 60 trillion. How many trillions of dollars have we spent on social, quote unquote, social justice through the government? And everywhere you go, there's homeless people. There's like every third little patch of woods you pass in your car, there's a homeless person living in there. There's homeless people everywhere. Tons of them. Hundreds of thousands of them. And we've spent how many trillions of dollars? It doesn't work, people. Okay? This just doesn't work. Those politicians, I don't know what they do with all the money, but they don't use it to help people. You give a politician, the only worse thing than giving a politician $80 million to help poor people is to give a politician $800 million to help poor people. That's worse. Because the more you give them, the more they're going to wait, the more the money's going to disappear. They're like magicians. They just make it disappear. It's like, well, who got it? And it was so funny, too. That thing at the Tropicana Field started getting to be like, it just such a theatrical comedy show with people. Do you pledge? And all these council people are making these promises. It's like, what? Who's going to follow up on this? And who's going to know? I mean, they can say whatever. They can stand up in front of the whole world and say they're going to do something. That doesn't mean they're going to do it. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, okay. Besides, it was just like I came for the affordable housing piece, and that was over. And they started getting into the schools and started making these council people make promises that they're going to award this contract to this one organization. And the poor council lady is saying, "Look, we're doing the best." So I had to leave. And on the way out, I met this beautiful couple, this big, like 6'8" black guy with dreadlocks and this little petite little white woman. And they had, just beautiful, amazing, super nice spirited people. I mean, nice and with just these beautiful, gentle spirit. And, we started talking about stuff, and it was just amazing. And anyway, I was bragging about my grandkids, my 9 grandkids, and they said they had 21 or 29. I can't remember which. And I was like, oh man, I felt so, what's the word? Like outdone, So, and they have 29 grandchildren and like a 7-year-old at home or something. I mean, so it was just awesome. But and it was so funny. He's like, this guy was so hilarious. He's like, this is just politics, man. How are they going to do this? What are they going to do with this $80 million? There's going to put 10 million over here, 10 million. I mean, he's like, by the time, what's it going to do for me? By the time it gets down to me, I'm going to get like $25. And that's the truth. I mean, that's the way this stuff works. So, and then they start speaking this institution speak. There's no affordable housing. It's like, there's no affordable housing. That's institution speak. It's like nonsensical, irrational, unintelligible gibberish. It's like, what are you talking about? There's like millions of people living in houses and apartments. If it's unaffordable, how are all of these people doing this? He says, I don't get it. I don't get this institution speak. I mean, it's just not rational. If the housing is unaffordable, then that's not good for the people that own the houses. That means nobody can afford their houses. So what are you saying? These houses and these apartments are just sitting there empty because they're unaffordable? No, they're not unaffordable. People are living in them. Come on. Millions of people in Pinellas County are living in houses. This is not an affordable housing issue. There's it's a spiritual, emotional, psychological, mental, it's some kind of